no gavel, so. Want to bring to order this Finance Committee meeting this June 30th, 2022. I'd like to welcome the public out. It's good to see your involvement. My name is Scott McVeigh. I'll be chairing the committee meeting tonight. With me up here is Director Chuck Jones, the alternate on the Finance Committee. As far as the staff, we have Christy Sartori. Appreciate you being here. So we bring the meeting to order, and I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody can stand and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move to open time. If anybody has signed up or has any comments or questions at this time, please step forward.
Caitlin Patrick, I haven't had a chance to look at the agenda, so I'm sorry if it's on there or not. I was curious how the budget is coming along and if there's any concerns on there that we should be aware of.
The budget is being worked on. We do have until September 30th to do a final budget. I'm hoping, and I'm pretty sure Christy's working diligently trying to make that happen. It's a process of getting real numbers. I'm hoping that the audit, when we close out, or even close of this fiscal year, today being the last day, will help in that process. I know some members of the public have issued concerns, and I have done some approximations on that budget. We are currently in budget numbers sitting for revenue at 100% on collecting the base rate and 100% on water sales. Just for the sake of my own knowledge, I did some math and figured out if 88% of the base rate was collected, we would have a loss of $218,000 and change. And if 90% of the water was sold, and we actually are not using to the original schedule, Bill has had to reschedule some water, and he has put about 364 acre feet into February, because it's easier to move forward into months if we're short than to reschedule back all the time. And I'll only do that one time. And that would lead, if we only had 90% sales of the water, could lead potentially to as much as $118,000 lost revenue based on the current budget, the way it sits, meaning that potentially we would have a $9,000 deficit on the next calendar year. Those aren't real numbers because we don't know what percentages, and I know Christy and the staff are working diligently to try to get us real numbers. I've had that conversation with Bill, and anything you care to add to that? No? Okay. You're welcome.
So you really don't need me with what she's got with her process there now for recording minutes, so that's awesome.
No, I think you should keep going.
Okay.
I'm watching how the correctness or lack of how it's interpreting some of the things he's saying.
Okay, but my question on the minutes, we know we're missing minutes from many moons ago, almost a year in June. So we've got like 6 months of minutes missing. I volunteered 6 months ago to help out and do that. But I was told no, that somebody else was doing it. So I'm just curious if you guys know.
Can I address that? I would be happy to. Yes, there are minutes missing from last year, and we haven't gotten minutes at all, I don't believe, from this year just yet. Obviously, the staff are behind. And even though it sounds like minutes, but it is part of the Finance Committee's concerns, because part of our corrective action plan for what we'll be talking about now will include the minutes from this meeting, showing Cal OES that we are diligently working to resolve the issues. The other thing, if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm not, are you not required, or it's strongly urged to provide minutes of these meetings to the auditors?
Absolutely, they've already requested them, and because we were unable to produce, now keep in mind, minutes mean approved, signed minutes.
Yeah.
It's not just someone's notes, right? Approved, signed minutes. So when we have gaps in our approved, signed minutes that we couldn't produce, I've been having to find workarounds to give them some other tangible
record that meets what they're looking for, and they used our posted agendas from the website.
Right,
So they did take those, I think in 2021, please don't quote me, but I think for that year, the district only has one complete and approved set of minutes.
right. So that's something that the board needs to
So it's
fix.
not that they don't, the records don't exist, the recordings exist, the agendas exist, all of that is there, but the time it takes to type them up, I'm told at one point, the request was that they become verbatim, which I don't think is appropriate.
No.
So, yeah.
An overview, because the district will hold in its records the actual
Yes.
audio or.
So anything that so tonight we're gonna talk about procurement, so that's on the agenda, I'm gonna keep it about that as the example. So anything that the board approved having to do with procurement or going into an emergency status, to correctly claim a bid waiver, anything like that, it only exists if there's a set of approved signed minutes.
Right,
I'm curious, does COVID come into this at all?
I'm sure, COVID comes into everything, but I mean, we're here now, we're looking for solutions.
right. So it sounds like it would be good, and since there is a process in place that the board approved last year for volunteers to come in, it would be nice to have one or two, three people, whatever, volunteer some time to either come into the office or can they take the recording home?
That's above my pay grade.
That's fine, we'll find out.
Caitlin has it all on YouTube. All you have to do is sit there and listen to the dialogue.
And give an overview,
Mm-hmm.
not a verbatim, an overview, the key points.
Can,
So,
can one of us type them up?
yes,
As long as
volunteers
it's
would be welcome.
consistent format, I do want to say that
Right,
the idea is to move forward well, not just to say we checked a box.
Right.
So I would hope that,
could you,
whoever decides that that is the right thing to do, that it stays a consistent format, and then we have an electronic version of it, when it's
Okay.
sent back here, because it has to be part of the board packet.
could you, if you have the time, come up with some direction for the board? Maybe a template for it, or what you are looking for, that we can then approve at the next board meeting and, seek out some people to help us with that.
Oh, did I not type that? I didn't.
No, I feel like there's a template right here, it looks really great.
Okay, so,
Okay. Anything else from the public before we move on to our one agenda item? Yes.
you want to be addressed by Director Scott or Director McVeigh? Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll have to go back in and change all of that. Okay.
Yeah, you do have to do it, it's,
I have one quick question. So are you coming up with that format for the minutes?
It already exists, actually.
Perfect. Because if we could create like a little volunteer, I would do it in the month of July. We could hustle through a bunch.
Okay.
Ooh, I just got goosebumps.
I think there was at least 2 meetings in July, because I believe there was a special meeting and the regular meeting, same thing with
No,
June.
no, no, I can type like crazy through July.
She means like she's.
This is
Oh,
my last
oh,
month.
the month of July.
Oh, okay.
And let's get our minutes caught up, because if we have that template, then a couple of us could do it, but if we have that template sent out.
And you can just listen to my videos.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if we have a
Okay.
checklist of the ones that are missing, and I would send over the first one for proofing, we could get it done, and I bet I could get my sister to do it too.
I like that. Very good.
I'm gonna also try and
So
see
if we
if
can
I
get some templates available,
Sure.
um,
Let's look at yours.
would the public be willing to come down maybe sometime the latter part of next week to pick up a template? We're closed Monday for the holiday.
Email me the
The most
template.
ones.
Email, well, why don't you later
Okay.
give Christy your email and she can do that. Anybody else, if you're interested, please email Christy and let her know, contact, and we'll get some templates out to you, okay? And get this going. We are on the last day of the current fiscal year. It'd be nice to clean everything up and have it ready for the audit, which I'm hoping will be done this calendar year and not just before the end of the next fiscal year. Question?
so you said, I'm gonna use Director Scott and I'll fix it. Director Scott asked Christie to present to the board what again?
Actually, she told me that the template for, doing the minutes already exists, so I
Oh, you
don't
don't
have to ask the board to approve one.
Okay, got it. I'm
Okay.
deleting, got it, done.
Anything else?
So we're just gonna say, volunteers came forward,
Excellent.
okay?
Okay, the purpose of this meeting was last Friday, Bill Paul Mesa, spoke with me here in the office and gave me copies of an email from Cal OES. Okay, they administered the grant for the car fire. And they did a review of some of the paperwork that was submitted. And they came up with 4 findings of deficiency in procurement and following various government codes. And we need to discuss those tonight and make some recommendations to the board because some of it's time sensitive. We were given 30 days to respond. The date on the email is, I believe, June 17th. But I had spoken with her, and I think it would be wise for us to ask Mr. Palma Mesa to ask for a short extension. Possibly because the next board meeting where the board would approve these things is not until the 27th of July. But I will be in touch with Kirsty Cal OES. I called her Friday late and set up an appointment for this Monday at 10 a.m. I spent some time going over all of it with her. And then I've done a bunch of research, some of which a few of you have seen. Director Jones has a copy of most of it. I've read it, I've asked questions and research, and I believe, Christy, you've done a lot of our legwork already for us. And I'd like to kind of go over that tonight. Do you have that with you? Now, you go ahead and hold on to yours while I find mine. Okay, why don't you start with finding number 1 and explain what it is, okay?
So the findings as a whole, so my background is in this. This is what I was doing before I came here. I was doing this for Tacoma County procurement. Part of the position I held, I did all of the procurement for the administration side of Public Works. So, corrective action plan is, it happens, and when I first got to Public Works, there was a large one there, so I've been through this. I already, put together the responses, and when I first got here, we recognized that we were non-compliant. I recognized that we were non-compliant with our procurement methods here at the district, and I visited with Bill a couple different times over the last couple months I've been here. I already started noticing areas that were going to cause a corrective action plan before they hit us with a corrective action plan. So we started putting things into place back in April. So I have backup to already provide to them for that. So number 1, all they're asking for is the first 1 and 2 are within 30 days to give a response of what we're going to do to get our stuff back in order. And they're not asking us to already get it done in 30 days, they're asking us to tell us how we're going to do better. So the response to finding 1, in my opinion, is the district will review, it's a 3-pronged approach. The district will review and update its procurement policy and include improved methods such as purchase orders, purchase agreements, board agreements, and clearly defined purchase thresholds. The district doesn't currently have that. The procurement policy that the district has now is actually, you guys call it a contracting policy and procedures. It's just outdated. It doesn't have a lot of the language that, when you're looking at this, you're looking at a 3-tier. It's not only the public contract code, but it's also government code and federal code of regulations, where one is silent, the others come into play. So, in order to fix this going forward, 1, we need to update our policy, make it more strict. It's missing language. A procurement method summary comparison. This is one that was pretty commonly passed around at my last place of employment, and it gives very clear guideposts for staff who's maybe asked to work on a project or do some preliminary, some front work to maybe see what needs to happen to go into the RFP. I noticed that you guys didn't, fly an RFP or an RFQ which is part of these findings when going with the car fire issue, but which would have been fine. I think if they had gone to board and had a 4/5 motion that it was an emergent situation, which our predecessors, or my predecessors did that, but they just did it late. They didn't do it before contracting. That's what gets you in trouble. So the second one says, we are gonna implement the practice, or I'm sorry, it says May of 22. We, the district, implemented the practice of obtaining a minimum of 3 quotes from qualified sources to ensure that we are obtaining the best value for money spent, which is a key point you have to have in your policy, and promoting equal opportunity for all vendors to do business with the district. The practice will safeguard against vendors being approached due to previous work history, which had been standard practice when I first got here. And then I said, see attached vendor purchasing comparison. So we needed road base, and they came and asked me about it. So we implemented this comparison where you have to get at least 3 quotes, and you have to give your reasoning in the bottom. This meets standard contract code for small value purchases. So again, then we go back to whether it's a purchase order or purchase agreement threshold. So that already exists, and we just need to let them know that in that language. And then the third one is in April of 22, the district implemented the practice of obtaining complete vendor information packets prior to services being performed. So the vendor is required to produce a complete W-9 or pay data record, certificate of liability insurance, naming the district as additional insured, proof of workers' compensation, and proof of current acceptable licenses and registrations must be obtained prior to services being performed. So that meets all of the findings.
Right. And are you gonna go into number 2 then? Because there was
Yeah.
also a part of that was to have a multi-layer process of review within the staff.
So that happens within this. This is your procurement policy that
Okay.
is lacking right now. Our procurement policy that's lacking. So that is where what you just said, that lives here.
Okay,
So this is just a simple response typically.
correct.
In my experience, that's all that they're looking for you to put in writing, that you recognize where your failures are and by what date you're gonna have something in place. And I put September 30th, looking at calendars and and that's.
Now, I understand that, and I think I agree with you. I would like to have this brought before the board. We need to be looking at it, but it should probably really be included in the packet for the next board meeting.
I think that that's very appropriate. The board probably wants to give a direction and deadline for some of the review of the specific policies right now. All of them have different reasons they need to be reviewed very
Yes,
timely.
all of them, I agree with you.
Because they all build on something, and we're kind of missing a few.
Mhm.
Like, for example, retention policy. I don't think it exists in the district.
So I would ask you to please attend the next board meeting to help the rest of the directors understand.
I saw one, I saw a retention somewhere.
I saw it only for JPIA, but it's not the districts, and it's definitely not something that we've seen as adopted. So I'm happy to have you, if you find it,
Okay.
my way, because it needs to be updated either way.
Yeah.
So then the second finding was basically that, I guess I didn't clarify it. The first finding was that we failed to, we contracted with a vendor and did not follow proper procurement policy. That's basically the gist of it. The second one is, we kind of did it again. Pace Engineering, we did not maintain sufficient procurement records, which is just maybe mention what I said, to adequately detail history of the procurement process. We were unable to provide those records and basically not able to justify our procurement method, which is part of the code, part of the law. So what we typically use for procurement is the SIP list. The SIP list kind of covers us on some of this. So I want saw all the other water districts were already listed on there. I don't know if you guys have used it in the past, but we're there. So the simplest is a place that holds all your RFPs and your RFQs in a cloud environment. And then, what happens is all vendors know to go to the SIP list to bid on any open,
Okay.
that's what it is.
Right,
And it's a free resource, it doesn't cost the districts anything, that's why everybody uses it, because by the time you upload an RFP or RFQ, we're talking this big, by the time you've got your bid packet together and all those things, and it'll live on there. It also will live on there for a long history of time, so in the event that had that been done, and this place, heaven forbid, no longer was standing, we could go to that cloud source and have provided them
excellent.
the records.
Now, in the procurement policy, will it include some of the deficiencies such as the Clean Air Act? Because of the size or the monetary amount of this contract, there were other things that were deficient in that process. The debarment suspension aspect of it and other things like that were
For
not
sure.
included. So will we find that in an updated procurement policy?
So in a way, yes, because the language typically would say, it would basically cite the source of which we're going to contract and follow the guideline of. And then what I've also seen here at the districts, I've only found one district standard contract that is the district standard contract. Commonly, we have one that's a standard general purpose contract, one that is a purchase agreement, so something
Right.
under $25,000, but over the threshold that you grant to your general manager, and then you'll have one that's public works, so anything that's gonna have prevailing wage, that sort of stuff. I don't know that that exists here in those forms, but then what happens is, to answer your question, the public works one's gonna have all that Green Act language, it's gonna have all the air, all of those things.
Good.
You just have to know to you, and so that's what the language says. And so on number 2, for example, my response for the first approach was the district's updated procurement policy will detail the method procurements and the requirements, the method of procurement and the requirements of future bid solicitations, which will include a selection rationale and scoring matrix, which is exactly the language kind of they saw that we were deficient.
Okay.
It's pretty basic, so if we had it already exist, like that would already be there.
Excellent. Just so the public knows, there's a difference between some standard contracts with a contractor locally and dealing in a grant funding. So we have to make sure that we follow government codes and whatnot. And also, so you know, one of the concerns is if FEMA were to audit this, and they may, we could potentially be required to pay back the $55,000 to Diaz and Associates. Okay, and that's why we're jumping on this so quickly, satisfy the requirements, and hopefully FEMA will take pity on this and not say, give us the money back.
They will.
Most
This
likely.
happens, as long
Yes.
as we show, responsiveness
Good
and
faith
willingness to
and-
correct.
Right,
That's all they look for.
I agree with you, but the potential is there. And that's why we need to do this properly. Okay,
I think it's more of you don't, let's say you purchase something, and then you can't document, which is documented on the response, Christie's response. Then you've got bids on the products that you're purchasing, and that has to be in place in order to prove that, your supplies have gone out to bid. Either
meaning that we should probably, on virtually all contracts, look for the bid process for qualified bidders on most contracts we put out, unless, of course, it is an emergency situation. I think in the past, they had a list of, oh, we used him in the past, let's go ahead and do it again.
Can't do that.
Can't do that, exactly. So, other comment,
Just real.
please? Might as well get used to it. Thank you.
Jackie Longfire. Quick question, would this, need, an emergency board meeting
No,
before our next
I
one?
don't believe so.
Okay,
We were considering.
I will be giving a phone call to Christie at CalEOS and letting her know what we're doing.
Okay.
And as long as I keep in touch with her on a regular basis and tell her that we're working on all these things, that I'm sure we'll be able to get a reasonable extension and at the next regular board meeting, we really should address this. Okay, any other questions? Any other aspects of these findings that you need to discuss?
So, yeah, no, we completed this, that's basically all they asked us to do, but then the work actually comes in from the time we hit send on this, it's just a response.
Yeah, it's a
And
response.
then 3 and 4, basically, they give us 60 days to actually show progress, and that's for contract.
Right.
So, I'm, came from a place where, once I would grab our standard contract, I would put it together with all of the things, and then council would review it. I feel like if we talk to, Christie at CalOES, I know that Caltrans, they would have sample agreements that they would let their, districts or their county agencies utilize that have already contained all the language in them. I feel like that would be an easy question to ask Christie at CalOES if she already has an existing document, even if we did edit it at all and then had our council look at it to make sure, I don't know if that's how we'll do that here, but if you start with their format, you're generally right on the money. There's no sense to reinvent the wheel, they already put us. Yay. Where'd you go? I do think on the next, I do think what we want to kind of focus in on to have prepared for the next board meeting or finance meeting or what it just needs to be approved along this lines is that our purchasing methods and what our thresholds are for simple purchases, purchasing agreements and board agreements, what those dollar amounts are, who has the authority. The district had not been using purchase orders. And so I can guarantee you we're using purchase orders moving forward. But there is some tiers that we're missing here between, somebody, going down to Napa or whatever and needing a purchase order and needing a purchase agreement or needing a board agreement. So if I fly an RFP and I get qualified bidders and we decide that we're going to award, before I can award that, I have to bring it back in front of the board and have the board agree that all of the thresholds are met and that we are awarding under board approval this contract. So all of,
And isn't there a standard dollar amount for one of those? What is it?
Yeah, so
10,000 and above, or?
kind of, sort of. So I kind of did some drafting here, and it depends on if there's services or labor involved, or if it's
Right.
things. If it's stuff and things, there's a little bit more leeway than if there's services involved, because then you're contracting for services. And if it's a public works project, which is really easy to be, that's a different story. But let's just say, if there were materials, I don't know where the comfort level of the board is or the public is on this, but if you were gonna buy things and stuff, you don't wanna tie the hands of a general manager to do business, but you also have to have the, financial security in place that we know that we're not just going out and contracting without hitting all the benchmarks. So my thought was up to $10,000 would be limited special approval by the board of directors. So basically, if there was something under that, I think right now you guys invested all that confidence in your general manager. I haven't seen anything that makes it so he can't contract in some. I don't know what you guys are going on there.
Okay,
Neither do they.
any suggestions from the public? Sally, go ahead, come on up, please.
What we used to do in Burlington is if you had a big contract like you're talking,
Okay, then we also had a local purchase order set up to where you could just buy, you know, if you didn't have to go through all the board, you know, make little simple things. At least you have the tracking of the purchase orders, even though minuscule as it might be.
Agreed, and I'm glad you helped me to know I needed to clarify that a little bit more. So that little sheet I told you where we're getting 3 quotes, that was us back in April or May, starting to create a preferred vendor list. A preferred vendor list is very doable under contract code. So
Yes.
that means that we have already gone upfront and secured that you are going to be able to do business with us, with all that means. Your either paid data records, your W, all the things. And we've already give you comparison to like companies providing like services and saw where that fell. It's very common, and then up to a certain threshold. So let's say up to $4,000 for one project. You can't split that. I can't say, oh man, I don't want to go to the board. You know, they're not going to meet for 3 weeks. So we're going to say it's this much from this vendor and this much from that vendor to get all of the things that we need. You can't do that. That's basically
No,
splitting.
you can't split.
So, so that's what I was saying, if up to $10,000, and this is for something that would require a purchase order, and then there would be a caveat also in here that says maybe up to $4,000 for, if it's already on the, blanket PO list, so preferred
Okay.
vendor. So the district's still able to do business in between board meetings, but with some structure.
That makes sense, doesn't it?
Yes.
Okay, something I think that's important for the district and for the transparency out to the public in general. So you know that there are controls in place, and that's part of what they're asking for, is show that you have controls in place. Comments, Chuck? Director Jones?
Sounds good.
Okay, any feedback from the public?
I think if, you want help like this in the future or from now on, you should have put that memo in the agenda or the email so that we got to see it. And if you can send stuff out to our committee, and we have a committee or a group of people that, you know, you're more than welcome to come and visit with us anytime. But, you know, if you want help, all you gotta do is send it out, you know, Beverly's email. Send it out to us so we can make comments on it and help you out, because there's a lot of us that have got experience in what you're saying, so.
You're absolutely right, I should have done
Makes
the
it easier on us
email
if
or
you
the
want help.
combination of emails into, as part of the packet.
Yeah,
First time through, I made sure Chuck and a couple of people had some feedback from it.
I was a little discouraged that as the accountant here, I didn't even know there was a finance meeting scheduled until the agenda kind of walked across the room, and I was asked if I could attend since Phil wasn't gonna be here. So I asked Scott in the future, I would think it would be common practice for the district accountant to attend the finance committee meetings. And maybe touch base with me before they were created, because I had other things I would love to put on the agenda.
yeah.
There'll be
Just
another
saying.
one. We'll have another one when the audit comes back, because we've got to review that in committee before we submit it to the board.
Might be a great idea to have one before that.
You know, other things, but there will be plenty of reason to have this on a fairly regular basis until things are back in line.
Cool, thank you.
Any other comment before I close the meeting?
So what was the whole point of this meeting?
To have what Christie did, was Christie put together this response plan. This response plan can go before the board with the assignments, and we've addressed it.
And that with your minutes is part of our response to Cal OES.
Right.
Okay.
So once they approve it, then Chairman Fudd will sign and date it, and it can be submitted along with the minutes showing Cal OES that we are working on this, and we have responded within the reasonable time frame, and allow us to move forward.
I mean, collectively, together, have the community here, and have consensus. It's perfect. Thank you.
Fortunately, because she's gone through this frontwards and backwards.
Yes, I was tickled to death to find out that she had done things like this in her prior employment. And I greatly appreciate your efforts on this. Thank you.
I'm impressed.
With that, I thank you all for coming in. We are adjourned.
I think, now that we're adjourned,